You are sitting alone, or so you believe. The room is quiet, bathed in the soft, fading light of a late afternoon. A low hum from some distant appliance becomes the room's heartbeat, and dust motes dance in a solitary sunbeam, tiny, silent witnesses. In this sanctuary of solitude, you should feel free, unobserved, unjudged. Yet you feel a shift in the air, a change in pressure so subtle it could be mistaken for a memory. You adjust the way you are sitting, not for comfort, but for appearance. You find your hand moving to smooth your hair, though there is no mirror. You close the frivolous tab on your browser and open one that feels more productive, more defensible. A question surfaces, unbidden and sharp. For whom are you performing? There is no one here, and yet the audience is palpable. It is a ghost in the machine of your own consciousness, an assembly of invisible judges whose verdict you have been awaiting your entire life. This audience is composed of the specters of your parents, the ghosts of teachers past, the phantom of your first love, the shadowy figures of colleagues, rivals, and even the fleeting faces of strangers from a crowded street. Their expectations, their imagined disappointments, their potential praise. It all coalesces into a single crushing gaze that follows you even into the supposed privacy of your own mind. You have sought solitude to escape the world's judgment, only to discover you have carried the entire tribunal within you. This is the great unnerving paradox of the modern self. We strive for authenticity, we champion the call to be yourself, yet our every move is a carefully calibrated performance for an internalized crowd. The very act of trying to be authentic becomes the most sophisticated performance of all. We curate our moments of vulnerability, stage our confessions of imperfection, and craft a narrative of our true self that is, itself, an appeal for validation. We are actors who have forgotten we are on a stage, reciting lines we believe to be our own thoughts. How much of what you call your personality is a genuine expression of your essence, and how much is a meticulously constructed mosaic of traits you learned would be approved of? How many of your desires are truly yours, and how many are borrowed from the lives you scroll through, the characters you admire, the people whose affection you crave? The terror lies not in the performance itself, but in the dawning realization that you may no longer know how to stop. What happens when the mask has been worn for so long that it has fused with the skin? Who are you when no one is watching? Not even the part of you that is always watching. This internal gaze does more than just judge your actions. It suffocates your potential. The bold idea is dismissed before it is fully formed because it might sound foolish. The unconventional path is abandoned because it defies the map drawn by others. The honest word is swallowed, replaced by a more palatable, diplomatic lie. We live within a perimeter fence of acceptability, a prison whose bars are forged from the fear of a single devastating verdict, the verdict of disapproval. What if the voice you have mistaken for your conscience is merely the echo of this crowd? And what if the profound emptiness you sometimes feel in the dead of night, that hollow ache of a life not fully lived, is the sound of your true self suffocating under the weight of this performance? The tyranny is not external. It is not a dictator or a regime imposing its will upon you. It is a far more insidious power, a government you have elected within your own soul, a warden you willingly obey. This phantom audience, this invisible tribunal, it has a name. This unseen force that shapes your reality has a history, written in the ink of our deepest fears and our most primal needs. To understand the cage, we must first understand its architect. And to dismantle the prison, we must first dare to see the bars for what they are. The architect of your inner prison is not a monster. It is a frightened child.
This architect is the oldest, most fundamental part of your humanity, the primal, desperate need for connection. You were born utterly dependent, a being whose survival hinged entirely on the approval and care of others. To be separated from the caregiver, from the tribe, was to be condemned to oblivion. This is not a psychological theory, it is the biological bedrock of our species. The fear of being cast out is a survival instinct burned into your neural pathways, a terror as profound as the fear of starvation or death itself. The ghost of the tribe still haunts your modern mind, and its one unwavering commandment is fit in. The tyranny of approval is simply the modern name for this ancient sacred contract, the trade of absolute freedom for the promise of safety. The great psychoanalyst and philosopher Erich Fromm identified this as the central drama of the human condition, our escape from freedom. As we mature, we sever the primary bonds of childhood, the umbilical cord to the family, the safety of being told who and what to be. We're thrust into the world as separate individuals. And the weight of this freedom, this terrifying responsibility to create our own meaning, to chart our own course, is for many unbearable. And so we seek what Fromm called secondary bonds. We frantically try to graft ourselves onto new authorities, a corporation, an ideology, a social group, a partner. We seek a new tribe to tell us how to live, what to value, and who to be. We flee from the wilderness of the self and run back towards the perceived safety of the herd. The internal audience you perform for is the price of admission back into this herd, a self-imposed surveillance system to ensure you never stray too far from the group's accepted norms. You have traded the terrifying abyss of authentic freedom for the comfortable cage of conformity. The 19th century philosopher Søren Kierkegaard saw this phenomenon with chilling clarity. He called it the tyranny of the crowd. For Kierkegaard, the crowd was untruth. Why? Because within the crowd, the individual vanishes. Responsibility dissolves. The heavy, difficult, singular task of building a self is outsourced to the anonymous they. What will they think? What are they wearing? What do they say is right? This they is a phantom, a non-entity, yet it holds absolute power over our lives. It is the faceless God to whom we sacrifice our individuality. You check your opinions against its imagined consensus before you dare speak them out loud. You measure your successes against its ever-shifting standards. The crowd, Kierkegaard warned, is a narcotic that shields you from the anxiety of existence, the anxiety of being a unique, responsible, and mortal self. Your inner tribunal is the voice of Kierkegaard's crowd amplified and internalized until it becomes the very sound of your own thoughts. This process has a clinical name in psychoanalysis, the formation of the superego. It is the part of your psyche born from internalizing the commands, prohibitions, and values of your parents and society. At its best, it is a moral compass, but at its worst, it is a merciless inner critic, a sadistic warden who is never, ever satisfied. It is the voice that tells you that you are not good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. It holds up an impossible ideal, a composite of every perfect person you have ever seen or imagined, and flogs you with your inability to match it. This superego is the engine of your performance. It is the director in the theater of your mind, whispering from the wings, more convincing, more likable, less you. You are haunted not by the ghosts of others, but by the ghost you have created from their whispers, a ghost that now has absolute dominion over your soul. This is why the approval of others feels so much like oxygen, because deep down, you have been conditioned to believe that its absence means psychic death, the ultimate terrifying abandonment. The problem is not that you fear disapproval. The problem is that you have mistaken its absence for self-worth.
The price of this self-imposed servitude is far higher than a mere lack of authenticity. The cost is the silent, creeping erosion of your very soul. It is a slow, quiet atrophy. On a neurological level, your brain becomes addicted to the fleeting highs of validation. Each like, each compliment, each promotion delivers a small, pleasurable hit of dopamine, this same neurochemical involved in addiction. Your brain's reward system, designed to guide you toward what is good for your survival, is hijacked. It learns to prioritize the shallow, immediate reward of social approval over the deeper, more challenging, and infinitely more fulfilling rewards of genuine accomplishment, mastery, or self-discovery. You become a ghost at the feast of your own life, chasing the next hit of validation while the main course of meaningful existence grows cold and untouched. This addiction rewires the very way you perceive reality. To avoid the psychic pain of being ostracized by your chosen group, your mind engages in sophisticated self-deception. It deploys cognitive biases like a shield. You develop a powerful confirmation bias, unconsciously seeking out information that supports your group's worldview and actively ignoring or discrediting anything that contradicts it. You're not seeking truth. You're seeking comfort and consensus. Your world shrinks to the size of an echo chamber, and you mistake the reverberations of your own group for the sound of reality itself. To disagree, to think a thought that would court disapproval, feels not just wrong, but physically dangerous. Your mind literally protects you from the threat of an original idea. The consequences for your personal life are devastating. Consider creativity. True creation is an act of rebellion. It is messy, uncertain, and often deeply unpopular at its inception. It requires the courage to be misunderstood. But under the tyranny of approval, your creativity is stillborn. The bold, strange, revolutionary idea is strangled in the cradle by the question, but what will they think? You opt for the safer path, the derivative work, the predictable opinion, the proven formula. Your potential for genius is traded for the security of being palatable. Your inner world, once a vibrant wilderness of possibility, becomes a manicured, sterile garden where nothing unexpected is ever allowed to grow. And what of love? What of intimacy? You seek approval to guarantee connection, yet this very performance makes true connection impossible. Others may admire, desire, or even love the character you play, but it is a love for a fiction. You receive affection, but it never truly lands. It feels hollow, a transaction for a well-acted role. You're surrounded by people, yet you are profoundly alone, because no one knows the person behind the mask. The deepest human loneliness is not being by oneself. It is being with others and feeling utterly unseen. You're loved, perhaps, but you are not known. And so you live with a quiet, persistent hunger for a connection that your own defenses make it impossible to receive. Your very capacity for joy withers. Spontaneous delight becomes a risk to be managed. You cannot lose yourself in a dance without the inner critic assessing your movements. You cannot laugh with uninhibited glee without a part of you monitoring the sound. You experience your own life through a constant low-grade dissociation, as if you're watching a film of yourself, critiquing the performance. This is the ultimate cost of the tyranny of approval. It is a kind of living death. It is the anesthesia of the soul. To live this way is to be a beautifully decorated tomb, admired from the outside, but holding only dust and echoes within. But what if there was a way to spark a revolution inside that tomb? A way to break the locks from the inside? What if the key you've been searching for has been in your hand all along?
The key has been in your hand all along. The escape from this prison is not a matter of building stronger walls to keep the judgment of others out. That is a battle you can never win. The true revolution is an internal one. It is a radical, terrifying, and profoundly liberating shift in the very seat of power. You must stop trying to abolish your need for approval. That need is too primal, too deeply human. Instead, you must change its source. You must fire the phantom tribunal. You must abdicate the crowd as your king and begin the arduous, magnificent work of becoming the sole sovereign of your own inner world. The first act of this revolution is counterintuitive.
You must learn to court disapproval, not through belligerence or needless antagonism, but with quiet, dignified courage. You must begin to treat the disapproval of the crowd not as a verdict, but as a compass. When you feel that internal friction, that fear of speaking your unique thought or taking your unconventional path, you must learn to see it as a signpost, indicating that you are approaching the edge of your cage, and that just beyond it lies the wild territory of your authentic self. Start small. Voice a gentle, honest opinion in a meeting that you would normally swallow. Choose the book, the film, the piece of music that you genuinely love, not the one that is critically acclaimed. Each time you choose your own inner truth over the silent demand of the crowd, you cast one vote for your own sovereignty. Each act is a declaration of independence. This is the practice of building what the psychologist Carl Rogers called an internal locus of evaluation. Imagine building a sun inside of you, a source of light and warmth that is entirely your own. This is your core set of values, your deepest sense of integrity, your non-negotiable truths. Henceforth, your actions, your words, and your thoughts are to be judged by one criterion alone. Do they align with this inner light? You begin to derive your sense of worth not from the applause of the crowd, but from your fidelity to your own conscience. The sting of criticism from others does not vanish. You are human, after all, but it ceases to be the arbiter of your value. It becomes mere weather, passing clouds in a sky that is dominated by your own unwavering sun. This is the path walked by the free thinkers of history. When Socrates stood before his Athenian accusers, he did not beg for their approval. He appealed to his daimonion, his inner spirit, the only authority he truly recognized. He chose death over betraying that inner voice. When Henry David Thoreau went to the woods, he did so to live deliberately, to strip away the demands of society and hear the frequency of his own soul. His act of civil disobedience was a testament to the idea that the approval of one's own conscience is superior to the laws of a state or the consensus of a majority. These figures were not supermen. They were individuals who made the terrifying choice to become their own primary source of validation. They understood that the freedom to be yourself is not given, it is seized. This is how you reclaim control. Through the daily practice of small rebellions, through the cultivation of productive solitude, where you sit in silence long enough to distinguish your own thoughts from the echoes of others, through the conscious decision to find the validation you seek in the integrity of your own effort, the sincerity of your own heart, and the courage of your own choices. You are not rejecting the world, you are simply refusing to allow the world to define your interior. You are learning to stand firmly on your own ground, to breathe your own air. When you do this, something remarkable begins to happen. When you finally begin to silence the ceaseless chatter of the crowd within, you start to hear something else, something you have not heard since you were a child. It is a different kind of voice, a deeper truth, and listening to it will change not only how you see yourself, but how you perceive reality itself.
When the cacophony of the inner crowd finally fades, the silence that follows is not empty. It is filled with a different sound, a different voice. It is not a voice that speaks in words, but a frequency you feel in your bones. It is the resonance of your own being, the signal you were born with. And listening to it reveals the final, most powerful realization of all, the one that makes the entire struggle with approval suddenly beautifully clear. The great tormenting error was never about who you were performing for. It was the belief that you were a performer at all. It was the illusion that there is a small, separate you here and a vast, judging world out there. This duality is the source of all the fear. The final realization is this: you are not in the universe, You are the universe experiencing itself in a way that has never happened before and will never happen again. The unique constellation of talents, quirks, desires, and perspectives that constitutes you is not a random collection of traits to be sanded down and molded for public consumption. It is a unique aperture through which life itself seeks expression. Your deepest, most authentic impulses are not selfish whims to be suppressed. They are cosmic instructions. The creative idea that felt too strange, the career path that felt too risky, the love that felt too unconventional. These were not your deviations from the path. They were the path. The tyranny of approval forced you to betray the sacred, intrinsic blueprint in favor of a generic, second-hand map. All the pain and anxiety you felt in seeking approval was the friction of grinding against your own nature. It was the agony of a river trying to flow uphill. It was the dissonance of a cello trying to play the violin's part. Your purpose was never to win the world's validation. It was to give your own unique note to the world. And the tragedy was that you were so busy listening for applause that you never allowed yourself to play it fully. True freedom, you now see, is not the absence of limits. It is the joyous, effortless alignment with your own essential form. It is the freedom of a star to shine, of a tree to grow towards the light according to its own internal law. Your life is not a trial to be passed. It is a work of art to be created. And the only critic who matters is the one who will look back from your deathbed. Will that person see a life lived in timid deference to the opinions of others? A collage of borrowed convictions and approved of choices? Or will they see a masterpiece of authenticity? A life scarred, perhaps, by the risks it took. Messy, imperfect, but blazing with the courageous, unapologetic light of a self fully lived. The choice has always been yours. The power to create that masterpiece is not something you acquire. It is something you uncover, something you reclaim.